Hello, and welcome to this clip in which we discuss how to prepare the panel meeting as a panel member. The panel meeting is the final stage of the evaluation process. In this video, we discuss how to effectively prepare the meeting, how the meeting itself proceeds, and how consensus scoring and ranking works. Finally, we share instructions on how to prepare feedback reports for the applicants, which will all receive feedback from the FWO. During the meeting, the scientific and administrative chairs will guide the panel through this final stage of the selection process to make sure that all regulations and rules are respected. During the meeting, the application submitted to your panel will be discussed. This discussion will lead to consensus scores for each application. These scores then determine a ranking, which will determine which applications can be funded and which are out of funding range. For every application, whether funded or not, feedback is provided. This feedback will be prepared by the rapporteur of the application and will be based on the synthesis report they wrote prior to the panel meeting. The assessment of the projects during the meeting will be based on the scoring grid, which is the same grid as the one you used during the preparation of your internal evaluation reports and your synthesis reports. Please note that for the specific interdisciplinary panel, there is a specific scoring grid containing a third criterion related to interdisciplinarity. As you are preparing the panel meeting and when you are discussing the assessment and scores during the meeting, please keep in mind that the evaluation of individual researchers and research teams should not be based only on classic output criteria like publications and bibliometrics. The FWO also wants you to take into account other elements that are indicative of strong researcher profiles, which we subsume under the term second axis. To allow you to do this, our application forms include the research statement, which is a narrative on the applicant's past, present, and future scientific career, a short CV with a broad spectrum of activities, a career path specifying the researcher's profile, information on any career breaks they might have had, the 5 main publications and/or achievements of the applicant, and information on other scientific output and impact they have achieved. The applicants also include a list of the funding obtained over the last 5 years. The total score for an application in this funding scheme consists of a team score, counting for 25% of the total weighted score, and a project score, counting for 75% of the total weighted score. At the start of the meeting, the applications are provisionally ranked based on the scores given by the rapporteur. To come up with these scores, the rapporteur took into account 2 internal evaluation reports, 2 external evaluation reports, and the rebuttal by the applicants. As panel member, you have access to these 5 documents via the e-portal as soon as they become available, so at the very least in the days before the panel meeting and during the meeting itself. Weave projects may have been submitted to your panel as well. These are applications in which a Flemish applicant co-applies with a foreign partner. While FWO takes the lead in the assessment of the application, the funding comes from both FWO for the Flemish researchers and the foreign funding partner for the foreign team. Weave projects are to be evaluated in the same way as all other applications in the panel, though of course the collaboration between the Flemish and the foreign partners should be taken into account. During the panel meeting, the panel may decide that an application is out of the panel's scope. This decision can only be reached in full consensus and means the immediate cessation of the evaluation procedure. The application will not further be considered for funding, as the panel finds that it is not set up to provide an appropriate scientific evaluation. Out-of-scope decisions are rare. Should you encounter an application that you think may be out of scope, please inform your chairs, as this will need careful discussion at the panel meeting. Before the meeting, an overview of all scores given to all applications will be sent to the panel members. This includes the rapporteur scores, which determine the provisional ranking of the applications. Please examine this overview carefully, refamiliarizing yourself with the applications and with the reviews you wrote in earlier stages of the evaluation process. Please also remember to read the rebuttals for the applications for which you acted as internal reviewer. Applicants' response to your review will be taken into account to determine the final score for the application during the panel meeting. Finally, you might consider your own scoring behavior, particularly in relation to other panel members. The goal of the panel meeting is to assign new consensual scores to the applications and, on the basis of these scores, to come up with a ranking that determines which applications are funded and which are not. The scientific chair will, in consultation with the panel, suggest how to approach this task. They might, for example, propose to limit the set of applications to be discussed in detail to the ones with diverging scores and large standard deviations. Or they might propose that the panel focuses its discussions on applications that are situated near the funding thresholds in the initial ranking. In any case, it is important to know that all panel members can put forward their ideas about which projects should be discussed and which might not need detailed discussion. The panel meeting will then proceed in consensus. The maximum number of projects to be selected for funding is determined by the panel's budget. The budget that is available to the panel is determined by the sum of all budgets applied for by the applicants in the panel. The overall success rate of the program is applied to the sum of applied for budgets, and this determines precisely how much funding the panel has available in each call, junior and senior, this year. This of course means that the success rate is equal across all panels in the program. It also implies that panels with a lot of applications have a larger budget at their disposal than panels with fewer applications. The panel may decide on the basis of scientific evaluation that cuts in the budget the applicants requested are necessary. For example, if the panel deems that the applied for budget is too high in relation to the proposed research activities. Such cuts are possible and should be made if deemed necessary, but they're not taken into account to determine the budget available for the selection of other applications in the panel. Finally, as the panel meeting progresses, please keep time management in mind. We want to make sure that you understand how the funding mechanism works. At the end of the scientific discussion, the panel will rank the applications based on the final scores. The budget is spent, starting with the top ranked application and then the second in the ranking, and so on, until the available budget is too small to cover the applied for budget by the next ranked application. As soon as this situation is the case, the threshold is reached. The balance of the panel budget will be transferred to the reserve budget. The example on this slide shows how the mechanism works. The panel has sufficient budget to fund the 4 top projects of the ranking. It decides, on the basis of scientific arguments, to cut in the funding for project 1, 2, and 4. These cuts, totaling €40,000, can, however, not be used to supplement the overall balance of €125,000, so as to still fund the 5th project. The 5th and the 6th project in the ranking are designated as reserve projects. All panels designate 2 reserve projects in both the junior and the senior call, and the funding that is left over from the balances of all panels is used to fund the top scoring reserve projects across all panels. Please note that in panels that assess projects submitted by researchers affiliated to the Flemish Institute for Biotechnology, or the VIB, at most half of the granted panel budget can be assigned to projects with only VIB researchers. This is something that the chairs of these panels will carefully monitor. The final step of the procedure involves providing feedback to the applicants. As a rapporteur, you should start from your synthesis report and update this with the findings from the panel meeting. Now is the last chance for the rapporteur to include any relevant comments made by the reviewers or other panel members in the feedback. Please also make sure that you discuss the rebuttal in the feedback report. The feedback report should reflect the panel's final evaluation of the application and should be written on behalf of the full panel, not in your personal name. We strongly advise you to make notes during the meeting and to integrate these in your feedback report. From the feedback, applicants should gain insight in the strengths and weaknesses of their application, how the panel reached its final conclusions to fund or not to fund the application, and how the project could potentially be improved with an eye on resubmission or on carrying out the proposed research. Please be aware that as part of the feedback report, applicants will be informed of the final scores they received and their quartile position in the overall ranking. During the rebuttal, applicants have not seen the individual reviewers' scores, only their written comments. You should not include these scores in your feedback report. The final panel scores, as well as information on the quartile of the ranking the applicant's application ended up in, will be added to the feedback by FWO. This concludes this video. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact your account administrator. Many thanks for your attention, and for now, goodbye.